Welcome back. More than 1,600 military working dogs serve around the world, including in some of the most dangerous situations.
And today, one of those dogs and his handler are in Washington, D.C. for a different kind of service. Brent Weber is live in the newsroom with more.
Guys, Gretna veteran Brad Mersney and his closest brother-in-arms, Paco, are in our nation's capital for a Wednesday ceremony. The military working dog, credited with saving hundreds of lives, will receive a couple of lifetime honors of sorts. During their service time together in Afghanistan from 2009 to 2017, Paco sniffed out 33 explosive devices, saving hundreds of lives. After they both retired from service, Paco was reunited with his handler and their family. He helped to raise those two daughters, already a recipient of a commemorative Purple Heart. Paco is one of 6 military service animals to be honored with the Animals in War and Peace Medal of Bravery and Distinguished Service Medal. He says, not he, but Brad says it's about time that people realize they're not just dogs, they're soldiers.
You fight side by side by the person next to you, and you fight side by side by the dog next to you, and more likely the dog's going to save your life than the person next to you is going to save your life, because they're going to find that explosive device that nobody else can see or smell.
Don Bacon is scheduled to present Paco with his medals Wednesday morning. Brad and his wife flew first class with Paco today. There are no pictures of that, though. The kids stayed home. They will be able to watch it on a live stream, and later this week, Paco will also be honored at a Washington Capitals National Hockey League game. And Brad's working with some other veterans and groups to see that the military formally recognizes animals like Paco in the future. As of now, all of these honors are created by outside groups. Coming up at 10, I had the chance, of course, to sit down with Paco and the Mersney family to learn more about those efforts and the war dog's achievements. Guys?